Hey there, we're the Westlaw Pirates and welcome to the show. Here to share our thoughts on Northwestern athletics and college sports with thoughts and analysis from the visceral to the statistical. We run our tailgate with the red pirate flag flying high above as we give no quarter, especially the fourth. I'm Sam Walter.
I'm John Lacombe.
And I'm Eric Scauspo.
Well, guys, today we are here to talk about a team we haven't played in, 30 years now?
What game are you referring to? Who can remember? Was that a notable game?
It might have been. Might have been a notable game.
We acquitted ourselves pretty well in that game, frankly.
We really did. Obviously, we're talking about USC today. We haven't seen them since the 95 Rose Bowl. We're going to be playing them out in LA this year, so not in the Rose Bowl, but it's just down the street a bit.
That is kind of wild that we haven't played them since 1995.
I mean,
well, I guess technically it was 1996, but still, it's kind of wild. No,
it is. But I mean, besides Stanford and Cal, have we played any other Pac-12 teams?
UCLA.
UCLA.
Bowl game.
Washington.
It is funny that we've played all the other California Pac-12 teams since we played USC.
We played Arizona State.
Yeah,
a couple times.
That was a while back.
Utah.
Yeah, Utah.
Oh, yeah, sure. Playing Colorado next year. I mean, they're not Pac-12 anymore.
So it'd be easier to count the Pac-12 teams that we haven't played: the Oregons, Washington State, USC, and Colorado.
Yeah,
I guess Arizona too.
Yeah. In any case, USC is in this weird space. I think they're still living off the Pete Carroll era. As far as what everyone thinks of US, you think USC, you think that there should be this sort of juggernaut, and they haven't been.
Do you think either USC or the mainstream national college football media realize that USC is in a weird place? Because they 100% are, but I don't think they know that they are.
No, they don't.
Well,
which is weird.
Well, this is the funny thing too. It's juxtapose them with a Nebraska, and we talked about this a little when we talked about Washington, but they're let's put it this way. It's not USC's fallen off. I think I'd phrase it more as I think I'd rather be playing USC now than any other time. I feel like there's a lot more peaks than valleys for this team. At the end of the day, they still are USC. It's they're always either up or waiting to be up. It's if that team is good, that team collects all the California recruits, and then they dominate. But yeah, they're not hot right now.
And it's weird because Lincoln Riley coming in, and everyone thought, that's going to be the thing that push them over the edge. And now all of a sudden they're going to be back in the national spotlight, and it just hasn't worked. Now everyone's, I think the general belief is Lincoln Riley's seat is among the hottest in the conference. I mean, clearly not as hot as Mike Loxley's, but would it surprise you if he was one of if more than one coach is fired at the end of this season that Lincoln Riley might be in that list?
No, not at all. I think that's gets to the heart of it, right? I think this is one of the biggest things. That team is its expectations, right? I would say if the number's 8 or less, he's in big trouble. And
let's put a pin on that for a second. We'll come back to it after we go through the offense, defense, and the schedule. John, when you look at this USC defense, what do you see?
Well, I see DeAnton Lynn, and going into last season when we previewed all the incoming Big Ten teams, this is a defensive coordinator we heaped a ton of praise on. One of the real ascendant young coaches in college football. And that was on the basis of this unreal one-year turnaround that he'd engineered with the UCLA defense, where he just took a defense that had basically sucked. And not just sucked the year before, but for a while before that. And then made them one of the best, really arguably the best defense in the Pac-12 that year. And then USC grabbed him. And I think because my opinion of DeAnton Lynn was and is so high, it's really weird to say that after 1 year of Lynn at USC, my primary takeaway is that he kind of got lucky this past year. So
Huh.
here's what I mean. Through a certain lens, you can view Lynn's start at USC in a very positive light. The Trojans gave up 100 fewer points in 2024 than they did in 2023. And surrendering 24.1 points per game looks like a massive improvement that is befitting of like a genius young defensive coordinator when you look at where USC was in terms of points given up the season before. The only problem with this narrative relative to the 2024 USC defense is USC's defense sucked last year. The only units worse than the Trojans in total yards last year were Maryland, Purdue, and Rutgers. And so, if you're keeping track, that's two teams that absolutely quit on their coaches, and then Rutgers. USC was awful on defense. This was the number 15 pass defense in the conference and the number 13 run defense in the conference. They were 15th out of 18 teams in tackles for loss. They were 14th out of 18 teams in sacks. If you're looking for some miracle reason for how this team only gave up 24 points a game in the face of that, you could maybe point to USC tying for 5th in the conference in interceptions. That's kind of a stretch, though. A much better explanation would be that this defense could depend on an offense that was throwing for nearly 300 yards a game. And a still better explanation, again, is seriously that they just got lucky. But I'm pretty sure lucky isn't the word that Trojan fans would use, because this is USC, and they lost football games to Maryland and Minnesota last year.
Can I build on that point?
Yeah.
So in 2023, they played Oregon, Washington, at the peak of its powers, Washington, I might add, a decent Cal, Utah, Notre Dame, Arizona. Those were all, and Colorado, like pretty good offenses across the board. Good offenses that they played last year. Penn State, Notre Dame, maybe LSU. That's about it.
Depends. Yeah, again, it's like they're not good. And that's the thing is like, right, maybe they caught a couple of offenses that weren't as high volume in terms of scoring points per game, but it really didn't make too much difference. Again, like you look at the numbers and you're like, there's no real explanation for this, but this is kind of, it's like we kind of talked about this when we talked about Wisconsin, right? Where it's like you got to divorce yourself from whatever you think of when you think of USC football or a USC defensive football team relative to this team, because that's not what this is, nor has it been for a bunch of years now. And you can extend that to the current landscape on defense as it pertains to defensive transfers. Because if you're expecting some big crop of transfers here to ride into the rescue because it's USC, let me give you a reality check. This may be USC, but there are just too many way better defenses for big-time talent if you want to jump to a bigger school with a better defense. A classic example of this would be Oregon. And it's not an accident that star USC defensive tackle Bear Alexander transferred from USC to Oregon this year. Now, USC certainly has some talented guys coming in, but not nearly the same level as an Oregon or as a bunch of these other teams, if we're talking about like name recognition and pedigree. Of course, this is still USC. There are still loads of 4- and 5-star guys in the mix to play in this defense. But I got to remind you, this has very much been the case for the entire Lincoln Riley era. And USC's defense has been garbage that entire era. So I think where I'd ultimately come down here is Lynn may still be an awesome coach, but I think it should be sinking into everybody, like just how big the culture rebuild is that he's facing within this defensive culture at USC right now. It's titanic. And Riley's doing absolutely nothing to help you with this situation. Your head coach is an all-gas, no-brakes guy. And factor into that the fact that this is an all-gas, no-brakes guy that, Scuzz will handle it more than I will, but in a tenuous, to say the least, situation. So for me, from my perspective, looking at the USC defense, if we're making a list of all of the blue bloods that we face on this schedule, all the games that the media is going to give us quote unquote no chance in. And you ask me to pick a group out of that to find a win. I'm putting USC at the top of that list and circling it like 10 times in pen. This is like, there's nothing our offense can't do against this defense. And that's even if it does get better. But if you're looking, like, it's really easy for you to map out a picture here. Preston Stone just goes off. This is the kind of game Preston Stone has been waiting for. This is a guy who, he had to sit out all of last year. Like, he was so hot as like a, this big prospect, and then stayed loyal to SMU. But he never really got those profile games. This is a guy who's waited his whole life to go into the Coliseum and cook a bad USC secondary. And he, like, absolutely could get the chance to do this. So if you're asking me, you're like, hey, look at all, like, the top teams that Northwestern plays. Like, what's a game they have the chance in? USC, because we could win 50-45 or whatever. Like, Stone could just light the roof on fire. And again, like, if we're talking about our chance to put up points against that USC defense, it's just really easy for me to envision that, and there's a real chance that happens. Unfortunately, as Scuzz I'm sure is going to illustrate, you may have heard that USC plays football on the other side of the ball also. And I think, like, any of the real questions involving USC are probably going to deal with the offense and whatever Scuzz is going to take us through.
So on that note, Scuzz, are they as hype as John is making them out to be?
I don't know.
Ooh.
I don't know. This offense is. I would tag this offense as a true wild card, and a lot of that is because of the quarterback position. Last year, Riley exacted a risky trade-off. Frankly, he benched Miller Moss and installed UNLV transfer Jaden Mayava as the quarterback late in the season. Wins against Nebraska and UCLA seemingly justified that change, but Mayava was not brilliant. He threw a pick six against Nebraska, some really crucially underthrown balls that their exceptional receivers turned into touchdowns. He took bad sacks. There was a lack of accuracy on standard Riley passing concepts. He is a improviser in an offense that is not meant to be improvised. Mayava created a lot more offense in the season finale against Notre Dame and in the bowl against A&M, but he also threw 5 picks and was only 55% complete in those games. To me, this all belies that Mayava has better athleticism and arm strength than Moss, like, no doubt. He's a much better athlete. He's much higher ceiling. I'm not sure that he's necessarily a better fit for the offense. And the obvious consequence to this choice that they made in early November last year is that Moss transferred away. Everybody knew this was going to happen. The moment that they did it, that Moss was done and gone.
I mean, he pretty much said it.
I was going to say,
he did.
He
came out and said it. And so now this is Mayava's team. He's going to be leading from the jump. I don't think there's any chance that any other quarterback plays unless he gets hurt. I think the key is going to be balancing his tendency to improvise with Riley's sharp offensive system. And I mean, presumably they've spent the offseason looking at a lot of Kyler Murray tape. Mayava is not Kyler Murray, but if you want to pick a guy that excelled as an improviser in this offense, I mean, Baker Mayfield just threw mesh concepts over and over and over and over and over again. And the wideouts at Oklahoma were good enough that you couldn't cover them in man, and those concepts always work if that's the case. But when you have a QB that wants to run around and play a little bit more hero ball, which is fine if the offense is designed for that, they got some figuring and thinking to do coming into this season. If for some crazy reason they get cold feet midway through the season, they've got a pretty awesome freshman coming in Houston Longstreet. But for better or worse, again, unless he gets injured, Mayava is going to be playing pretty much every snap this year. So let's just assume he plays more within himself in the system. There are still really big holes to fill around him. The offensive line, and if you listened to our Purdue episode, you would have heard me talk a little bit about USC there, because the offensive coordinator from USC has gone to Purdue over this offseason.
We talked about that through a certain lens, you could view it as that their O-line coach jumped ship for Purdue.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's pretty. I think there's enough smoke. It's pretty clear that USC wanted him to leave. Whether that's a good choice or not is another question. And there's also, I think you brought up the great point, John, that he may have wanted to go and to get out ahead of whatever potential downside there is to the season for the coaching staff. Anyways, point being, the offensive line, which has taken has taken a beating in the press, statistically was really good last year, especially on pass blocking. Only 15 sacks on 530 dropbacks. That's bananas. That is a bananas rate for an offensive line. And that was with Miller Moss as the starting quarterback for 9 of the 12 games of the regular season. I'll mention that USC gave up 30-plus sacks each of the prior 2 years. This was a dramatic change for them in 2024. I will note that they only had one guy of the 3 that left after last season. They only had one guy get drafted, and there's really nobody on this year's team that looks like a bona fide pro prospect. So some of this noise around the O-line could just be expectations versus past USC O-lines and the expectation that they've got a first round draft pick and these massive dudes causing mayhem up there every single season. Josh Henson, who was maybe invited to leave or decided to go or just wanted to be with his buddy Barry Odom again at Purdue. Who knows why, but I don't think it was about the O-line. I think it was probably more about some of the play calling. I mean, if you recall, USC had Michigan beat and blew it. They had Minnesota beat and blew it. They had that Notre Dame game, came down to the very end. They had Maryland. They lost by 1 to Maryland on the road. There was situations late in games where they weren't running the ball despite having Woody Marks and this
Penn State went to overtime.
Yes. Having Penn State at home, who they had, again, dead to rights, and then it goes to overtime and they lose. They had a lot of late game problems last year. It's almost like I think at one point, I think the Solid Verbal joked that the James Franklin monkey paw had been handed off to USC, or maybe that was the Shutdown Fullcast. Regardless, some other amusing college football personality made that comp last year. Anyways, it's a weird dynamic though, and regardless of what happens with this O-line, or how good it is, they have some solid players coming back. They have some pedigree. Like I mentioned, their left tackle looks like a bona fide pro prospect. They are going to have to make up some of what Woody Marks did on his own last year. This dude was incredible. 1,100 yards. He was really, really good. A reasonably high draft pick, I believe, coming out this past year. So trying to fill Woody's shoes will be Eli Sanders, who's transferring from New Mexico State, and Wayman Jordan, a JUCO who averaged around 7 yards a carry the last 2 seasons. Those guys look talented, but this is not Woody Marks level talent. There's not a lot of guys coming in on the O-line. They're mostly rolling with what they have in house. They have a really incredible tight end group. It's very deep. It's very strong. So perhaps that can help with some of the uncertainty on the O-line. Lincoln Riley isn't exactly known for rolling out a ton of tight ends on every play, so we'll just have to see what that looks like. And I'll say Lincoln Riley, running the ball has never really been his thing. So without Marks and without clear heir apparent and nor an upgrade of talent on the offensive line, it just Occam's razors that they're going to drop off a little bit in the running game. Passing-wise, they spread the ball around a ton last year. They had 9 guys with double-digit catches. It was a good to great unit, frankly, loaded with size and speed. Interestingly, Mekhi Lemon, who was their number 1 guy on the stat sheet, and their number 1 guy by talent reputation, he really came alive in the last 4 games with Maiyava throwing the ball. About 49% of his total production came in just those 3 games. The number 2 guy, Jacoby Lane, is also back, and that is it. Zachariah Branch is gone. Kyron Hudson is gone. Deuce Robinson is gone. And, of course, Woody Marks, who also had almost 50 catches last season, is gone. And there's not a ton in the cupboard. They're like, their depth chart is not loaded with a bunch of young guys. This is not like Ohio State, where Ohio State turns over a ton of receivers and they have all the best receivers from the last 3 recruiting classes ready to just step up. This is not that. Now, they have transfers from Auburn and Boise and Utah, none with a ton of like production at their past places. Prince Stanchion, who comes from Boise, he averaged like 15 yards per catch over the last couple of years, but only chalked up 600 yards in those 2 seasons. So there's, again, some talent in the room. None of it is really super proven behind the top 2 guys. They have a couple of super recruits, Walter Lyons and Walter Matthews, could be impact players in the passing game that would, maybe add a dynamic that would unlock this offense. But in total, like, this is just a lot of ifs and maybes. Maybe the offensive line stays solid and is able to maintain their performance. Maybe the running backs can step up and fill Marks' shoes. Maybe they can find enough wide receiver depth. Maybe a tight end threat emerges in the passing game. Maybe Maiava finds his groove in the offense. If the defense is not going to be great, and it sounds like it's not going to be great, this offense is not great either. I don't see them dramatically improving on the 30 points per game that they produced last year. Like, falling back into the Clay Helton zone of the mid to high 20s I think it's on the table. I think there's a risk of that actually happening.
I think so. I mean, again, I'm like, this, none of it looks good. I mean, it looks rapidly more good for us. And we can get to that piece, but it's Scuzz, I think, like, talking about the offense, you mentioned Branch. I don't see a bigger harbinger of doom than that. That's one of the most electric players in college football. And that's a West Coast guy. And that's a West Coast guy who goes and plays football for USC and then leaves. And I just like that. I mean, for the brand of USC football, they can say whatever and be like, hey, we didn't need him, whatever, etc. That's a marquee player. But that's a guy who he's like a human highlight film. And yeah, like production-wise, there are other guys who had more production, but that's their return guy. That's their fastest guy. But that's just the kind of guy who represents what USC cool is supposed to be. And for him to be like, nah, I'm going to Georgia after 1 year, I'm like, I don't know. I just don't know.
It tells you where the power center is, right?
Yeah, right.
But it's funny because just like at a glance, you look at the Penn State depth chart, you look at the Ohio State depth chart, you look at the Georgia depth chart. It's just littered with top end guys. Top end high school talent. Texas is the same way. USC used to be that way, and they are not that way right now. There is definitely talent on this roster. Again, Maiava has an awesome arm. He is a good athlete. He was a good quarterback, a very good quarterback at UNLV. There's a reason that they put him in place last year. He put up 35 points and almost beat Notre Dame in a huge game to end the season against a team that ultimately went to the national championship on the back of their defense. He has 2 really good returning receivers who were highly productive last year. And they have some other talented guys, but this is just not. USC is quite objectively not on the level of Oregon, Ohio State, Penn State, even Michigan from just a pure talent perspective. And that is a weird thing to say.
If you or a loved one is seriously injured by someone else's negligence, hire Kent Simpson of the Simpson Law Group. After over a decade prosecuting murder cases in Chicago, Simpson opened his own firm focused on wrongful death and personal injury cases. He specializes in car, truck, motorcycle, boat, and other transportation accidents, as well as construction accidents, medical negligence, slip and falls, product liability, and more. Millions recovered for clients. No fee unless he wins. The Simpson Law Group. Compassion, empathy, and vigorous advocacy. Go to simpsonlawgroup.com or call 312-332-2107 for a free consultation. And go Cats. Let's just run through their schedule here real quick. Couple of interesting ones.
Not great, Bob. Not great.
So they open up the season at home against Missouri State. Then they welcome back Clay Helton and Georgia Southern.
Let's go.
They travel to Purdue. They're home for Michigan State. They're at Illinois. Then they get their bye week. Home for Michigan. At Notre Dame in October. They get another bye week before they go back to the Midwest, head to Nebraska, come home to play us on November 8th. Iowa, November 15th is their homecoming game. Then they're at Oregon before they finish up the season against UCLA.
Our game against them, I think, is actually a Friday nighter.
It is. Yeah, it is. Friday night on Fox, so national
Yep.
TV on a Friday night. Are we sure are we sure Lincoln Riley's a good coach?
Well, this was
Just
the
like-
thing again. You talked
He's
about,
a really good offensive coach
Offensive
and
coordinator.
molder of quarterbacks.
Sure.
right.
Absolutely.
He's Cliff Kingsbury. Exactly. And it's like you talked about the monkey paw joke, but it's like, again, it's like, oh man, look at their record, but they were so close in all these games. And it's like, yeah, don't be the coach who's known as winning unless the game's close and then you lose. That's not something that's not a reputation you want to sit with. And I don't know. I mean, obviously their first 4 games are cake. Although, again, the Aiden Childs thing, I'm like, some quarterbacks are going to throw for 1 billion yards against this defense, and I don't know who they're going to be, but someone is going to do it. But then after those first 4 games, man, I mean, they play 4 ranked teams in their final 8 games, plus Iowa, at Nebraska. I mean, that's not even folding us into this, and any Preston Stone possibilities, and their rival. And I don't feel like, in the face of everything that went wrong last season in Lincoln, is there really a vibe that they're going to somehow bounce back in the face of all of this? Like, how? With what? Like Scuzz said.
All right, so September 27th. So those first 4 games, they should roll. They should absolutely roll over those 4 teams, Purdue and Michigan State. And then they got to go to the down south in the corn and play an Illinois team that could be coming off of a win over Indiana. Imagine that Illinois beats Indiana on September 20th and is coming home for homecoming against USC with a orange-plated path to the playoff, frankly, in front of them.
Right.
That's and here's the other thing. Like, I don't know that Illinois is going to win 10 games again this year, but they are 1,000% going to be a belligerent animal that just punches you in the gut and tries to cram the ball down your throat up the middle over and over and over and over and over again. And I don't think that this defense looks like the type of defense that wants to handle that running attack.
This defense can't handle Luke Altmaier either. Like, it's not like they do one thing way better than the other thing. Their Michigan, their offense is equipped to deal against Michigan's defense as any offense is equipped to deal against Michigan's defense. But I mean, these are all good football teams. At Notre Dame, at Nebraska, I mean, again, there are just a bunch of good defenses on this schedule, and a lot of those teams also have very high potential offenses. Like, Illinois is warts, but I mean, if Illinois wins that game 50-49, they're happy. And the USC, again, I'm looking at this schedule and being 10-2. I mean, that seems like a big ask. 10-2, yeah.
I'm also really interested to see how the travel plays into things. In year 2 of West Coast football in the Big Ten, I mean, it's not like they're going out. They don't have anything out east, out in the Eastern Time Zone except for Notre Dame, and that doesn't really count as the Eastern Time Zone. But they have to travel to Purdue, sandwiched between 2 home games. There's just the level of difficulty there is not enough to matter, in my opinion. Everything else is bracketed either by an away game or a bye week, or it's just not that far to go.
I'll flip the travel thing. For us, the biggest thing about going to USC is the travel. There's no like look at where USC could theoretically be. Like there's a worst case scenario that's not too hard to imagine at all, where USC is like 5-3 when they host us. You think there's going to be a turnout at that stadium for Northwestern on a Friday night in November for a USC team that's 5-3? The jet lag is going to be what we're fighting, not some USC home environment. We're not going out there.
No. Going west is way better than going.
Yeah,
going
we
east.
ain't fighting jet lag on a Friday night game. Here's the
Not
other
at
thing
all.
I'll tell you: if I'm a Northwestern football player, and you tell me I get to go to Southern California on November 8th,
Yeah.
I'm feeling
Oh,
pretty
hell
damn
yeah.
good about myself.
And
Again, right.
and you're dealing with if they're not having an incredible year, USC
Right.
fans aren't going to show out.
No.
Deal with LA traffic on a Friday afternoon, Friday evening. I guarantee there's going to be a large percentage of purple in the stands.
100%.
I hadn't thought about that.
That's the classic weird game, right? Where it was like our experience when I went to the Pinstripe Bowl, and Northwestern's turnout's like incredible. It's because there's a ton of Wildcat alums in the Los Angeles area. You know they're going.
I think back to the Rose. I mean, yes, it was the Rose Bowl. It's a different story, but like it was over 50% Northwestern, and that was against USC just going across town.
Do we know what Lincoln Riley's buyout is?
Nope.
It's a ton of money. I
Is it
forget what
really?
it is. It's huge. So his two big things are he's got a huge buyout, and they have, at least on paper right now, inked a monster recruiting class of guys who'd be coming in next year. All of that is ifs and buts and candy and nuts. If they win 7 games or whatever, it's like, what is it, Sam? What's the number?
You want to guess?
Is what, 10? Or more?
More.
20?
More.
Man.
90.
90.
90.
Is it? It's 90?
90 million.
Oh my God. Well, then never
Still?
mind then.
Yeah. Estimated buyout around 90 million. It was previously reported as 88 million for 2024. In 2020, in
Holy
22,
crap.
he signed a 10-year contract worth reportedly $110 million. So because
Man, there's gonna be some like Mel Tucker like shenanigans here to like gonna be sending hookers to Lincoln Riley's room.
Get caught in the Playboy Mansion grotto with like whatever.
Well,
yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
The reason I asked is like if that were not the case, and I like what you just said, the USC cannot afford to fire him. Like full stop. It's just not going to happen. Now they go bad enough, and the alumni back up the Brinks truck to take care of it, like A&M did with Jimbo Fisher. That's the only way he's getting canned. But I was going to ask what you guys thought the chances were that we would be facing interim head coach D'Anton Lynn on November 8th, and I think the chance is 0 because there's no way they're going to be able to execute a midseason firing under that kind of buyout.
not with a $90 million buyout.
Yeah, no
no
way.
Yeah, I mean, it's just so funny though that let's say they go 8-4 and then have to stomach it again.
Let's say they go 6-6. That's the worst case scenario in my opinion.
I mean, 6-6. All those recruits are going to check out. Like, I'm sorry.
Yep.
Like, they're going to do what Zachariah Branch did. Like, this vaunted recruiting class, those guys all have other options. And everyone's going to be whispering. I mean, every USC recruit's having people whisper poison in his ear right now, being like, you're sticking with a guy who's not going to be. Because what they try to do is, if he did go 6-6 or 7-5 or something like that, and the wheels are falling off the wagon, they might be coming to him being like, wouldn't you rather be an OC of like some NFL team or something like that? Like, would it like
Pete Carroll's going to get sick of Chip Kelly and be like, "Hey, Lincoln."
Right, exactly. Being like, why don't we help each other here, Lincoln? Like, let's meet in the middle and you can go do, your OC thing. Again, though, like you could certainly read it the other way and be like, USC easily could have won a bunch of games last year. But then I redirect you to the fact that they gave up 24 points a game by luck. I think at the end of a lot of those games, those opponents were being like, man, we really need a touchdown now. Get the touchdown because this defense isn't good. Now, again, maybe Lynn is gonna finally like build a little positive momentum here. But I don't know. I was expecting more from them in year one. I mean, he walked into a great situation. It's not like his situation now is somehow better than it was last year. Like it just may be a tough road to hoe there right now, and they need a culture adjust. I don't know. They'll be able to pass, they'll be able to throw a lot, and that offensive line, even with the loss of Scuzz talked about, it's probably still going to be good. But I don't know. Again, like I like this game for us. And you may like say like, hey, it's still Northwestern USC. You don't hear me saying this about Oregon or Penn State or whatever else, this one doesn't feel like those games. There's just, this team can throw the ball really well. And after that, in terms of what's the next best thing that they do, it's a pretty big drop off. And they have a hard schedule, and they have a coach in, at the very least, a very unsettled position. I'm like, let's take Preston Stone out there on a Friday night. Give me some Pac-12 after dark action, and let's go out there and get crazy.
Any last thoughts on the Trojans before we get out of here tonight?
Like I said, if you're out there.
Well, yeah, if you're out there, you like get to this game. I was just gonna say, if you're and I just processed this in my head. If you're trying to process what John just said and you're struggling with it, this team lost to Maryland last year. We played Maryland,
right?
We beat Maryland,
yeah, by a lot.
And they lost to Maryland last year, and it is not implausible in the way that a number of other teams on our schedule would be implausible.
Right. There, like, what's the worst case scenario for USC's record? Worst case at the time that they play us, 4-4. Like, it's not hard for me. What, you think they can't lose at Nebraska? Sure, they can lose at Nebraska. So it's like they could be 8-0 too. But again, there's laundry's pulling a lot of weight here for a team that is not incredibly deep and is not riding a hot streak right now and doesn't do a ton of things well. They do one thing really well.
Not only did Maryland beat USC, they beat them the week after we beat the pants off of Maryland.
Right.
So this is not like something crazy happened. So I just again, this is going to be a pretty interesting game to pay attention to.
I'm not gonna lie. I've got that second game. I got the Georgia Southern game circled. Clay Helton.
A little Clay Helton revenge.
No, seriously. You don't think Georgia Southern is going to get up for Clay Helton? Going back to USC?
Was it Georgia Southern or Georgia State that went and beat Scott Frost at Nebraska? It was one of those. It was one of those two. I can't remember which one it was.
I think it was Southern, but I'm not 100.
I can never rember which one is the good one and which one is not.
But run it back. Sure. Yeah. Why not?
No, it was. It was Clay Helton, wasn't it?
It could have been. I'm trying to remember, but add it to the list, Clay. If that's true.
Well, on that note, we'll go ahead and leave it there for tonight. Head to our website, westlawpirates.com, where you can leave comments and questions. Find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Blue Sky, and YouTube at Westlaw Pirates. You can always email us, westlawpirates@gmail.com. Tune in next time as we give our visceral and statistical views on Northwestern athletics, and look for us in the West Tech lot of Martin Stadium flying the red pirate flag, because we give no quarter, especially the fourth. For John Lacombe and Eric Scasbo, I'm Sam Walter. Thanks so much for listening. We'll see you next time.